Hello there. Well, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Super Nintendo is my favorite console of all time. And 1994 was a great year for that system. And since it's the 25th anniversary officially, I thought it might make an interesting idea for a video. But what made 94 a great year for the Super Nintendo? Well, for one thing, it was a very heavy focus on that system obviously there was still the Game Boy, but we're focusing on home consoles. Nobody really knew about the N64. I don't even know if it was in development or not. Nobody was talking about it. We'll just leave it at that. And there was still a couple of games trickling out for the NES, but most people were focused on the Super Nintendo. And don't get me wrong, NES and N64 were great systems, but Super Nintendo was better in my opinion. And the other reason, there were so many great games that came out for the Super Nintendo that year. Some of which, there was a lot of new games, but there was also some ports of arcade games. A good example would be Mortal Kombat 2, because it was released in the arcades in 93 and then ported to home consoles in 94. So I made a list of some of the games that were released in 94. Keep in mind, these are just small. I made a list. I knew there's no way I was going to remember these all off the top of my head, but I'm well aware I'm leaving out some cult classics, but I'm just focusing more on ones that I specifically remember playing from that time period. Even if some of these games that I didn't play back then, I played them in recent years and such. But anyway, Donkey Kong Country, Blackthorn, Super Metroid, Mega Man X, Pocky and Rocky 2, Mortal Kombat 2, which I mentioned, Primal Rage, Killer Instinct, Stunt Racer FX, is it Stunt Racer? Yeah. Final Fantasy 3, aka 6, Earthworm Jim, Super Bomberman 2, Super Punch-Out, King of Dragons, Peacekeepers, which was what that song I was just playing us from, Metal Warriors, Breath of Fire, and King of the Monsters 2. Now let me just share with you some memories with some of these games. That's Mega Man X, for example. Oh god, so we'll start with that since that was released in January, or it was in the January issue of Nintendo Power, anyway, of 94. And I was always a huge Mega Man fan, I still am, but that was really cool to me because it was a whole new... I remember reading about it in Nintendo Power, looking at all the characters and the layout of the levels and stuff, and I was like, oh, this is awesome, because it's you're not fighting robots or robots with human faces, you're fighting animal robots, and it's in the future with a new Mega Man character and stuff, and I'm just so excited for that game. My brother and I used to rent that constantly. I don't think we ever actually owned it, but we used to rent it all the time. And Blackthorn, which was kind of an interesting game. It's kind of what the hell do you call it? Flashbacks, or, yeah, it's the best way. I think it's a pretty decent game. What else was there? Pocky and Rocky 2. Some of these were games that we used to rent all the time, like Pocky and Rocky 2 and Metal Warriors, which is such an awesome game. King of Dragons. I never played the arcade version as a kid, but I did play the Super Nintendo version because my brother rented it and I absolutely loved that game. Earthworm Jim was another one. I absolutely loved Earthworm Jim. And in fact, Earthworm Jim, I don't think this will ever happen, but I would love to see him make it into Smash Brothers. Just because I think he'd be pretty easy to make a moveset for, and to see a level like this, just gross out, wacky level, because that was kind of what the 90s was. It was the gross out era. To see a level like that in Smash Brothers, not to mention those games had such awesome music. To hear some Earthworm Jim soundtracks in Smash Brothers would be sick. But I think he has a small following for people that I'm not the only one that wants to see him get into Smash Brothers. It's still maybe some other people. I know there's other people, but it's just not well, let me put it this way. There's probably 10,000 people that want him in there compared to millions that want somebody like Banjo-Kazooie or Crash Bandicoot. You see what I'm saying? He's not really in the minority. And what was the other one I mentioned? Oh yeah, Pocky and Rocky 2, which that one really always stood out to me among the other games, the other Pocky and Rocky games, probably because there was more playable characters, or more characters in general. I remember... Cat's trying to jump on my lap. My brother had rented that. We were going away on... I think we were going to a family member over the weekend or something, and he had rented it, but he forgot a second controller. Fortunately, he did rent it. And speaking of my brother, this is his cat right here. I'm taking care of them for some time, yeah. Anyway, what other was... So Killer Instinct, God, I remember... Really, cat? Really, Edgar? That's his name, Edgar. Named after Edgar Allan Poe. Really, Edgar? But anyway, so, yeah. Killer Instinct. God, I remember reading about that in magazines. I'm like, oh my god, this sounds awesome. Like, in playing it in the arcade. It used to be across the street. I was at the arcade that used to be across the street from my mom's house, and we had played it there, and we were like, I was just like so blown away by the graphics, and it was awesome when it was ported to the home console because it was, it's just such a great game. Obviously the console port wasn't the same, but it was still cool to have these ports of arcade games, like basically bring them into your living room or bedroom or whatever. Same with like Mortal Kombat 2, which was my favorite out of the ones of like the digitized actors and stuff. And yeah. Another thing with Killer Instinct, I remember it came with like a soundtrack on CD too, which was kind of cool. They called it Killer Cuts. I think my brother still has it. He actually had two. He gave me one. Why he had two, I don't know. And the King of the Monsters 2, oh my god. Again, never played the arcade version as a kid, but my neighbor had it on the Super Nintendo, and god, we played that game like religiously. I'm absolutely obsessed with that game. I freaking love that game. Donkey Kong Country. I remember there was a thing. I think it was something to do with like a subscription to the Nintendo Power, where you could get like, it was a mail order. You get like this VHS tape where it was like this guy went behind the scenes of the making of Donkey Kong Country. My brother had it. It was like probably 10 or 15 minutes or something, but that was kind of cool. And it's funny to think about it that now I'm sure that video you could just find on YouTube or something, but back then it was like just like cool. They're like, oh nice, I got it through like a mail order, but yeah, yeah, a lot of great memories for Donkey Kong Country. Super Metroid, wow. I remember I'm not sure how commercial BJ's is, like how global it is or whatever, but it's pretty much like Walmart, except it's more like a big warehouse. And again, there was one, well, it's still there, down the street from my mom's house, that, that was the one I went to mostly as a kid. And the funniest, little bit of a side story, every time right at the beginning of the store, I don't think it's there anymore, there was a huge gumball machine that, let me put it this way, take the scene from Austin Powers Goldmember, when it's like, lower the globe, and he drops it on his head. The glass dome which contained the gumballs was probably about 3 times the size of that globe. Every time I walked into BJ's, all I could think of was like, imagine if somebody just took a bat and like smashed it open, like gumballs, hundreds of them pouring out everywhere and people slipping and stuff. So, and then there was an area where there was like this big tire display. So it was funny, just like among those two things and then like other sections of the store, I remember just walking around there as a kid. I was thinking like, this would be like a great scene for like a Jackie Chan movie or something. But anyway, getting back on topic, I remember going there when I was a kid. It was like my brother, my sister, I think his friend Matt was with us, and we went to BJ's. It was like we went to BJ's, and my brother picked up Super Metroid, and we also got the movie We're Back. So every time I play Super Metroid, I think of the movie We're Back, and vice versa. But yeah, Super Metroid, oh, that is just such a masterpiece. Like, I love that game. But I always remember that specific part of yeah, I played it a lot when I was a kid too. My brother and I, or my brother, my sister and I, excuse me, used to love watching our brother play it, especially the end scene. Obviously, I played it myself too, but we always just loved watching him play it too. And finally, let's talk about Final Fantasy III, which is really 6. Now, a funny thing, as much as I love the Super Nintendo, like I said it a million times, my favorite console of all time, for some reason, I don't remember too many of the commercials from that. There's only a couple that I remember, this being one of them, Final Fantasy III, or 6, whatever. Actually, I'm not just talking about because you can watch them on YouTube. I mean, I remember literally watching them on TV back in like the 90s and stuff. And this one I always remembered. It's such a funny commercial. Like, even to this day, I think it's pretty funny. 25 years later, well, give or take, because the game came out in like the fall, at least like in North America. And it's like, Mog's just sitting in the office like, okay, kid, let's see what you got. And then, like, the monsters, like, come in, and he's like, okay, yeah, right, zaps him into dust. Then another one comes, and he's like, next! Another one comes in, zaps him into dust, and it just keeps going. And what was kind of cool about a commercial like that is because it's like, when you go and play the game, and you're fighting, like, enemies or bosses and stuff, and you say, like, hey, that one was in the commercial. But, yeah, that was just, oh, I remember I don't know if I ever played it as a kid. But I remember watching my brother play it all the time, and I remember I absolutely hated Kefka because I was like, oh, that asshole! He killed all the Moguls and like the Espers. He like turned them into those magicite to harness his own power and become like a god. I remember I hated it. But looking back, like once I got into my teenage years and stuff and got more into the game and stuff, and I was like, oh, he's actually like a great villain. Like I think he's one of the greatest villains in video game history, not just Final Fantasy, but yeah, that game is such a masterpiece. And those are just some of the games that I fondly remember from that timeline. And I think that's why, again, this was such a great year for the Super Nintendo. So many great games, and like I said, there was others. So, because of this, is there any I left out? Because chances are maybe I didn't play them at the time, but what are some of your favorite games that were released for the Super Nintendo in 1994? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this channel. And as always, thanks for watching, everybody. And as the Mighty Max used to say at the end of every episode, see you next week.